Hello everyone, it's your host, your boy, Jet Black, the one and only, here with another exciting live stream. And today in this video, we're going to continue where our last video left off, where we were talking about would a mouse kill you in a game show? In the last video, I explained that mice were originally considered to be not as smart as rats. Welcome back, Vanessa Brooks, it's good to have you. But recent studies have shown that rats and mice are at the same intellect level. They have like the same level of intelligence, they're about equal. I was then going into detail about how rats and humans in a study were challenged against each other. They had two challenges they had to complete, and one, the rats had to identify patterns, whether or not a pattern was considered good or bad based off of a set of rules, and humans had to do the same, and they competed to see who would do better. Then in the second challenge, rats had to create a good pattern based off of the rules, and the people had to create a good pattern based off of the rules as well, and they competed to see who would be better at completing that task. Um, the results were actually rather interesting to that because it showed that rats actually were better at completing the second challenge, and that in the first challenge, rats did equally well to people. Poco said, "What?" No problem, Poco. I can explain what we just went through. So, long story short, rats at completing tasks that are related to identifying whether a pattern is good or bad are just as good as people at completing said task. And rats are better than people at completing tasks that are based on creating a pattern that is defined as being good or bad based off of a set of rules than people. Mice and rats have the same level of intellect or intelligence, meaning that if rats are just as good as people at doing the first task, that mice are also just as good as people at doing the first task. And that if rats are better than people at doing the second task, that mice are better than people at doing the second task as well. So the question that I asked at the beginning of the first video is that if you had to complete these challenges as a game show against a mouse, and if you won both challenges, you got whatever you wanted as a prize. But if you lost even one of the challenges, that you would die. Would you accept the challenge or not? Now, the big thing to understand is that most people don't know all this about mice and rats. They don't know that rats and people are about the same at completing the first challenge, and they don't know that rats are just significantly better at completing the second challenge than people. So most people would say, oh, it's a rat, so I'm just gonna win. Like, I don't think a rat is gonna be able to beat me at a thinking challenge. So yeah, I'd do it if I would win whatever I wanted, but odds are you have an equal chance of completing the first challenge before the rat. So you might be able to beat the rat in the first challenge. It's like a balanced competition. But in the second challenge, rats just think differently from people. They just have an advantage in the second challenge. And more likely than not, you are just going to lose the second challenge and the mouse would just kill you. So that's like a big part of the video. So Poco says, how? Okay, so the way that they do these challenges is they teach the mice. The original study was done with rats, but because rats and mice have equal intelligence, you can kind of trade them out. So the way they would do the study with a mouse is they teach the mouse what a good pattern looks like and what a bad pattern looks like. So that when you do the challenge, the mice has the same understanding that a person has, because the person would be given rules saying if a pattern looks like this, it's good, and if a pattern looks like this, it's bad. And then the two would be challenged to pick what pattern is a good pattern and what pattern is a bad pattern. The way that the humans do this challenge is with a computer. So they take like a computer mouse and they drag it around to click on the good one and click on the bad one. The way that the mice do the challenge is they have these little like waterways, and the mice have to swim to the good pattern or swim to the bad pattern. And when they create a pattern, it's a similar thing where they have to like swim around to select. They try to make the interfaces equal, except for the fact that mice don't know how to use a computer mouse. So they did it as a swimming challenge, something that the mice could easily understand. So what's interesting about it is that most people would assume that they would do better than the mouse at these game show challenges because they just don't know any better. They don't look into studies and research that shows that In some cases, mice are just as smart as people, and in other cases, mice can even be smarter than people. But it gets crazier. There have been experiments done where mice have been given human glial cells to where half their brain is human and half their brain is mouse-like. Now, in case you don't know what glial cells are support cells for your neurons, and your neurons are what your brain uses to think about things. So essentially, it's giving a mouse brain the support that a human brain has. It's been shown that when you give a mouse brain the support that a human brain has, it multiplies the mouse's intellectual ability by 4 times. So now if you have a mouse that's 4 times smarter than normal, if a mouse and a person were even in the first challenge, now that mouse has a strong advantage in the first challenge because he's 4 times smarter than a normal mouse that is normally equal to a person. So like 4 times better than a person in that way, if you want to apply the math. But I'm not sure if that's entirely correct to apply the math in that way toward a person, to say that a mouse would be 4 times smarter than a person. But that's kind of what it equals out to with this very like general understanding of it. So if mice are just better at the second challenge naturally, then you're essentially making the mouse 400% better at the second challenge if the mouse is 4 times more intelligent when you give it a half human brain. So that's really interesting as well. Another thing about that, if you were to be put into this game show and they're like, do you accept the conditions? When it's a normal mouse, you're going to be thinking to yourself, this mouse isn't going to be able to beat me because I have a human brain and human brains are just better than mouse brains. So more likely than not, you would accept the invitation to do the game show, even though odds are you're probably going to lose the game show, but you don't know that. But if they said, we're going to give you a mouse that has a half human brain, then you may be a little more hesitant. You may be like, this is definitely not your normal mouse. You would assume that the mouse may be somewhat smarter because it has a half human brain, but you wouldn't know how much smarter. And you would think to yourself, if I'm smarter than a mouse, normally, with my 100% human brain, if a mouse had a 50% human brain, then I would still be smarter because my brain is 100% human and the mouse's brain is only 50% human. But you would be thinking about it in the wrong way because you wouldn't know that the mouse already has an intellectual advantage, and you also wouldn't know that the mouse with a half human brain has an even higher intellectual advantage in the second challenge, and that it now has an advantage somewhat, I would believe, in the first challenge. Now, what's interesting about this is that if they told you that the mouse has a more than 50% human brain, so now the mouse has human neurons and human gilial cells, meaning that they have support cells to help their neurons to help them think that are human, what would you say? Would you say, yes, I would like to do the game show? Or would you say, no, because now the mouse is like more significantly human? That one I would say is more up in the air once you say that it's like mainly a human brain. But what's interesting about it is that we've actually, Christian Davis, welcome to the stream, it's good to have you. What's interesting about it is while a mouse with a half human brain has been shown to be 4 times smarter, when you give the mouse too many human neurons, and thank you for smashing that like button, truly appreciate it. When you give the mouse too many human neurons and too many human glial cells, instead of the mouse getting smarter or dumber, it'll just have no change. It's been shown that, Christian Davis said, yeah, no problem, thank you. It's been shown that the mouse just stays the same. So your chances at beating the mouse in the game show don't significantly change if the mouse has more than half human brain cells. And I find that really interesting because you still aren't doing very well in that challenge. The mouse still is an equal playing field with a human for the first challenge with a majorly human brain. And in the second challenge, the mouse still has an advantage over you, even if it's not a super intelligent boosted mouse. So what if we got rid of all the intelligent boosting, so no half human brain for the mouse, no like mostly human brain for the mouse, just a normal mouse brain, but we double the mouse's physical stats. And this has also been demonstrated in labs by doing a gene suppression. So there's a gene that can inhibit your muscle growth, and what they do is they make that gene not express in mice, and it causes the mice to become like twice as strong, twice as fast, have like double the endurance and all that. So Poco said 50% what? Okay, so to explain what I was just talking about. Earlier I was talking about a mouse that had a 50% human brain. So that's been done in labs before. And the way that they do it is they give the mouse gilial cells, like human gilial cells. Gilial cells are the cells that help support the neurons in your brain. And the neurons in your brain are what you use to think about and process information. Christian Davis said, I body slammed the mouse. So what's interesting about it is that when you give a mouse a half human brain, as they've done in labs, it increases the mouse's intellectual ability by 4 times. So you end up with a mouse that's 4 times smarter than a normal mouse, which can be very threatening in this life or death game show situation, because in the first challenge of the game show, where you have to identify a good pattern versus a bad pattern, mice and humans already are on an equal playing field. Based on studies, a mouse is just as good as solving that kind of problem as a human is. But in the second challenge, where you have to create a good or bad pattern depending on the rules given to you, the mice have an advantage. They've just been shown to be better at doing those kinds of thinking tasks already. So if you give a mouse a half human brain and you have them compete against a human, they have 4 times a better chance than they originally did when they had a not half human brain. But what's interesting is we've seen mice be given a majorly human brain, where they're not only given human glial cells, but given human neurons and told to complete tasks. And these mice, when given human neurons and glial cells, happen to just be normal. They don't get the 4 times boost that they get from getting a 50% human brain, which in other words is saying that mice are better if they have half a human brain. But if they have more than half of a human brain, it doesn't change the way that they think, which I find really interesting. So, in other words, what I'm saying is that if you're challenged to this game show, you probably should say no, because the mouse already has an advantage. If you're challenged to the game show and the mouse has half a human brain, then definitely say no, because the mouse is just 4 times better at both challenges. If the mouse has more than half of a human brain, still say no, but it's not as bad as when they had half a human brain. It's about the same as when the mouse just had a normal mouse brain. Poco's like, oh, okay. But what's interesting is that if you have a normal mouse, but you use gene therapy to give the mouse like increased muscle mass, this has been done in labs where a mouse can run like twice as long and twice as fast. The mouse has like additional muscles, and it's just stronger. Should you say yes or should you say no to the game show? What's interesting is that the genetic engineering done on the mouse actually could make it either better or worse for this challenge, and I'll tell you why. So if they apply the genetic therapy to the right cells, to the muscle cells, then the mouse will become physically stronger, but it won't affect their intellect. The thing is, in order to complete these challenges, humans use a computer mouse to select what pattern they think is the good pattern or the bad pattern. Mice, however, don't know how to use a computer mouse. So instead, they swim in water and they swim to the pattern that they think is the best. So what makes it interesting is that if you double the mouse's stats, the mouse is like faster, has more endurance, is stronger, then the mouse is now a better swimmer. The mouse can now swim for longer and faster than normal. So if in order to win the challenges, you have to solve the problems faster than the mouse can, now the mouse is faster at solving the problems, and it's more likely that the mouse can beat you. So I would say that if the mouse is like genetically engineered to be stronger, even though they don't get an intelligence boost, they're now able to solve the problems faster than a normal mouse, which could be threatening for your situation, considering that the game shows life or death. Now, what's interesting is you might be able to win, though. Christian Davis says, how does the mouse select the pattern? So the way it works is that there's a body of water that the mouse has to swim through, and there are like different lanes, I imagine. They don't fully tell you what they have to do, but you know that they have to swim to select. So I imagine the way that they swim to select is they have to go down different lanes. So, yeah. So because it's a swimming challenge, if you make the mouse stronger and have more endurance and faster, the mouse now has an increased ability to swim to its target faster than it did before. So it could hurt your chances at winning the game show in that way. Now, what's interesting is it really depends on what scientist is doing the genetic therapy. Because if they do it to fat cells rather than muscle cells, it's been shown that once you cause that inhibitor to go away in fat cells, it would cause the fat to like rapidly grow and make the rat really fat. So if the mouse got really fat and tried to do the challenge, the mouse would have a harder time doing the challenge because it has to swim, and that would give you a better chance at winning. But that relies on the scientists having to fuck up. So Christian Davis said, is this a real game show? So they did actually do this study between rats and humans. So the issue is that, well, it's not an issue. The real life study that they did between rats and humans was not a life or death thing, where if the human lost, they would die. But that's the idea of this video. The idea of this video is, if it was a life or death challenge, instead of just them doing a science experiment, would you accept? And I feel like in most cases, people would. People would just assume that they're smarter than a mouse, and they just think that they would like win the challenge. Christian Davis said, lol, a mouse with diabetes, in reaction to the idea of the mouse getting fatter due to the genetic engineering thing. So this was a real challenge that was done between humans and rats. The big difference is that they didn't have all these different augmentations I'm talking about. These augmentations are real things that have been done in labs like over the years, but they weren't all done in this study. So a lot of this is me talking about, what if they did all these different things to a rat or a mouse, and then had you compete against said mouse? Would you say yes? Would you say no? Like, what would your thoughts be on that? And without knowing all this information, I feel like most people would probably pick the wrong choice. Christian Davis said, yeah, what they need to do is make them bet money to play so they get their money when they lose. What would the mouse do with the money? Well, I guess the scientists would take the money. It wouldn't be the mice taking the money. But I do think it would be interesting if they did the study, and in the study they told the subjects, you're competing against mice, and had them like put money forward. I feel like the incentive of earning money, like from betting, would definitely change the dynamic of how the people thought about the problems, because now there's more on the line. Christian Davis said, buy some cheese. You put some cash down for some cheese. That is interesting. I believe I've talked about all the different scenarios, and in all of them, other than the one where the scientist messes up and makes the rat fat instead of strong, I would say you probably wouldn't want to take the challenge. Because mice just have a leg up in the second challenge to begin with, and in the first challenge, you have essentially an equal chance of losing as you do winning. So you might as well not even vibe with that. I also did this video not just to talk about, what people know and don't know in terms of mice and rats, but also to talk about how mice and rats seem to just have all these like bonuses that we've given them through lab work. And the idea that they can rival us in intellectual based tasks, and we're able to also make them stronger and faster and have more endurance than normal, it just shows that when it comes to engineering and messing with a creature's brain and advancing a creature's body, it seems that these advancements have gone a long way for like mice. rather than people. And it's understandable why. We do mice testing in order to try and figure out what's safe to actually do for people. But we can advance mice testing significantly faster than we can for people. So if you suddenly read a newspaper article, if a mouse is super strong and super fast and has crazy endurance and has half a human brain and is 4 times smarter than a mouse and in some cases is significantly smarter than people, don't be surprised because all that stuff is out there. It's just not all being put together. And if you suddenly find yourself watching a game show on TV that's a lot like the one that we described here, but less lethal, don't be surprised at that as well. Because, I mean, that is just a thing that has been demonstrated in studies and is totally possible. Christian Davis said he tased a mouse and now he feels bad. Keep in mind, while mice can at times be as smart as people and at other times even be smarter than people, and with half a human brain are definitely smarter than people at times. Um, that doesn't mean that they have like a consciousness. That doesn't mean that the mice have a greater understanding of like self and like emotional identity. I'm not saying it's good that you tased the mouse. I'm just saying even though mice are smart, that doesn't mean that mice are sentient. And then Christian Davis said, but they feel pain though. That is true. They do feel pain. Ooh, sorry about that. So, yeah, it wasn't cool for you to tase the mouse. I do agree with that. But what do you all think? Do you think this should definitely be a real game show? Do you think it should be like what Christian Davis said, where they like actually put money down and they bet? Um, I doubt they would ever do a lethal version of this. You know, that wouldn't be cool. I would like to see this be done with the different augmented mice. So you have like the strength mouse versus the mouse that has like the half a human brain versus like a person, to where you have multiple mice competing against each other and against a human. I think that would be pretty cool. But what are your thoughts? Make sure you post them in the comment section below. I'll definitely read through them, reply. I always try to reply and like comments and everything like that. And thank you all once again for watching. If you like this video, don't forget to smash that like button, favorite, comment, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you'll be notified whenever we do these live streams. Christian Davis said mouse gladiator fights. I feel like there are rules against having animals fight with like strength, but I feel like there aren't any rules against having mice compete in like intellectual things, testing. Peace.